We'll give everyone the usual few minutes to show up and settle in. Alright, so a few minutes pass, we'll go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, welcome to today's Content Creators User Group. Let's see, announcement-wise, we got a couple things that are worth mentioning. One thing that's probably most relevant here is we made the decision to break the GLTF mesh import out from our 2504 release. We're currently trying to get something together for you guys to mess around with. Right now, rigged mesh is the current sticking point. We're trying to get that functioning for you guys using the examples that we're using right now are not just your simple rigged mesh. We're actually trying full avatars that have been offered to us by content creators for testing purposes. So we're currently working through that. That's the biggest item that we're working on. We have started to evaluate what's gonna get us over the line to have material import working at the same time with it. Right now, that's a bit of a split flow. Last CCUG, I asked the question of, hey, would it be okay if we just didn't bring in the material and you just had a separate material import process, or do you just want the base textures? It seemed like people were more than okay with just having just a blank model, more or less, with all the faces available to add their materials to. We did get some internal feedback around that. There seems to be more interest in shipping a purely drag and drop flow for that. So you just drag the mesh in and boom, it's there with all of its materials. We're still investigating what's it going to take to get us over that line. and it's not looking particularly trivial. So we're still having conversations around that. Hopefully, I'll have more information to you guys soon on that. What that means for 2504's current feature set, we're pretty much looking at three main things for the features on that. We're focusing on getting those three things together at this point so we can ship 2504. That's going to be increased hover height. Let's see. Outfit subfolders and @mention support in the viewer as well. Trying to think of if there's anything else. Oh yeah, there's also the upcoming 2505 release. Right now, that's mostly looking like a bit of a catch-up release with the old develop code archive. What that's mainly going to have is just a bunch of fixes that we've pulled in from the old develop branch of the viewer's code base. And on top of that, inventory favorites. Inventory favorites needs a little bit more time to bake. It's a bit on the buggy side, so we're going to be hopefully getting that together as well. As far as which release to expect, GLTF mesh import, I'll have more information on that soon. Really, the biggest thing is just hammering down what the actual MVP for GLTF mesh import is. Again, we're receiving feedback internally on that. We're trying to get the original MVP that we've been discussing out first before we start going towards any significant revamps of our mesh import pipeline. But we're still trying to determine, okay, well, what's going to be most appropriate there. So more information on that soon. If we go for MVP, then obviously that means that you guys get that sooner than later. If we decide that we want to just go ahead and bite the bullet for revamping the mesh import flow, then obviously that means we're going to need more time to get that done. I'm just trying to think what else is going on that front. I think that's all I can think of. Kyle, do you happen to have anything else?
No, that was great coverage. Just the question there in local chat.
Oh, the mesh importer beta. We're not opposed to shipping a project viewer with GLTF mesh import. We do need additional testing with that. Definitely seeing what will break it. We're going to try and get that sooner rather than later. Definitely, if anyone's gonna break this stuff, it's gonna be you guys, and that's what we're gonna need to make this thing stable. So, for the greater than 8 faces question, right now, like that's a part of the MVP that we're trying to get to, because with Collada, you can go through and do that. What we do with the Collada importer, though, is a bit of a trick. So with the Collada importer, we actually go through and take the mesh, and if it has more than 8 faces, we break it up into multiple meshes. Yeah, I know, but it also works with some of our current technical constraints around face count. So that's just kind of like a system-wide constraint that we have to work around. My hope is that one of these days that's not going to be a thing that we have to really worry about. That's going to require some server changes, I believe. Ryder will probably correct me if I'm wrong. But we kind of have to, like, we have to do that for now.
You mentioned the textures. I guess you mentioned that when people are uploading, textures will come with the upload versus it being blank, like we suggested in the last meeting, I think. Is that going to limit how people can texture in world? Because I think some people have like a whole inventory full of color bases and then they just throw those color bases on their PBR stuff to choose the colors in world.
It doesn't change how you can texture it in world.
Fantastic, thank you.
We're not going to be making any changes like that. You can still go through and texture everything in world as you could otherwise. Really, we're just trying to figure out a path forward to have like complete material import along with the model itself. Yeah, pretty much Crexon. If it can work about as good as what the current Collada importer can do, then that's pretty much a MVP win right there. That means we can ship it, in theory, assuming we don't receive any other feedback as far, like internally, as far as shippability there. Remember, just because we hit the MVP that we're talking about does not mean that we're allowed to ship it. We still have a couple of other gates we have to get through, mostly approvals related.
With the inventory favorites, is that going to be inside the inventory, or is that going to be a separate function like favorite wearables in Firestorm, etc.?
It's going to be in the inventory.
Is that open to suggestion that it not be? Because
We're
that
already
it's a hit. Sorry.
we're already far enough along with that I don't think we really want to go through and hold up its release for very long. Really, we want to try and get that out sooner than later. There's a lot of bugs with it right now, so that's probably going to be the primary focus for the 2505 release. Trying to get those worked out into a state where we can actually ship that. This is something that was originally going to ship last year, just to be clear to everyone here. So we kind of just didn't because we had a very large shuffling of priorities around middle of last year. So it kind of ended up on the back burner. And we're probably just going to go ahead and get the inventory favorite stuff out after we kind of give it a good bug pass and shake out some of the issues with it.
Right. Okay. So it probably is going to be like at the top of your inventory or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's an additional tab in inventory, and then everything that is favorited will have star icons next to them. And if you want to check it out, Sassy, it's right there on our release notes page for download in 2504. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
2505, not 2504.
I'm sorry, 2505.
Just one other question, sorry, about the inventory. I was wondering if there's ever a chance, I mean, what you've done with inventory in the last 2 years has been fantastic. Images deserves a standing ovation. But is there any chance, I've asked before about us getting different object icons. Is there any chance we could instead perhaps get tags? I know for things like hair especially, the ability to actually tag an item as being hair and then being able to search a tag would be an incredible resource.
I mean, like content tagging.
Yeah. So like you buy a hair creators for some reason never actually write hair in their object. So you can't just type hair and get all your hair. You have to sort of like do it by creator. But the idea of being able to tag hair when you buy it, or if the content creator themselves could actually tag it as a hair item, then searching hair would give us hair. Or kitchen appliances could be appliances, etc. You could give us maybe 10 slots to create tags for, and then, you know, it would just, it would make the inventory amazing.
I can just briefly say we have a design for that on the roadmap.
Great.
We know it would help. Yeah.
I do see a question from the YouTube chat. Let's see. Just going through. Is there any thought towards better terraforming tools from Fallen Angel? That's always a fun topic. We definitely want to revisit terrain at some point. Right now, it's just a matter of time and time availability and priorities. No shortage of ideas there. Cosmic, for example, was working on terrain painting, so you can actually select which parts of the terrain have what kind of material applied to it. Just kind of recap on efforts that we've done there. Some other stuff that would be kind of cool is just generally, higher resolution terrain is something that's been asked for, but that requires a lot more additional technical work for LODs on terrain, stuff like that. We're always open to suggestions on this. Please go to feedback.secondlife.com if you have anything specifically that you're looking for, and file an issue there so we can review it. And as far as legacy names, probably the wrong meeting to ask that. I feel like that's probably going to be the land and support meeting. That's really more of a policy thing that you'd have to ask around that group, I think. This meeting is Vivox, not WebRTC.
Is any news on when WebRTC is going live? That seems to have sort of faded out.
We have someone who's working on WebRTC right now to try and get the remaining issues shaken out of it. Cindy asks, is there any further news of avatar height equals prim height? You mentioned last time you triage it. No, not right now. It is something that we do need to revisit. Making sure that height calculations are correct would be very nice. I mean, for example, this avatar is something like 4 feet tall, the one that I'm in right now. Some of those height calculators, for some reason, think I'm 6 foot tall, which is amusing to say the least. But we do need to kind of take a pass at figuring out, like, what is the discrepancies we have for avatar height and the like, so...
If you go and change avatar height and stuff to actually be on scale, can you just automatically adjust all the doorknobs in SL at the same time?
Unlikely. Sirprofsky's asking, do I anticipate any new terrain textures for the mainland? That is a frequent question. It would be nice if we could do that, but it seems to be one of those things where people are frankly terrified of touching anything on the mainland. It's kind of understandable. For example, having actual HDR skies on the mainland to make PBR actually look good is always a fun one. There is some concern that we could break some stuff there, that sort of thing, and I think it's similar with terrain textures. One thing to consider is that we still have a bunch of people on Firestorm 6617, which does not support PBR terrain at all. So that is kind of an issue there. They'll just see, basically, the terrain will just go gray for them. So that's one problem. But it is something we would like to do. We just need to get more people off of 6617, pretty much. Don't want to break things for a ton of people. It's okay if things break a little tiny bit for a few people to encourage them to upgrade at earliest convenience. But breaking it for a lot of people is obviously very, very bad. That's the dilemma that we face. Yeah, what Elizabeth said there and the local chat, we're working on removing those pain points. It's a process, unfortunately. There's still other things that I know people are upset about from that camp. One thing to note is water still doesn't look the way that they would like it to look. And then there's some people who just frankly don't care, or they're afraid that if they do upgrade, their performance is going to tank, and they're going to have an unusable experience, regardless of any changes that we've made in more recent times to further curb the performance problems that came with PBR, which we're still not done with, by the way. We still have a ways to go. I'm not acknowledging that we've fixed everything yet.
So, I have something I'd like to bring up that I ran into recently, and seems like this might be as good as any place. Might have to do with server as well, but so I've been working on a pizza, right? I mean, say you got a pizza box, and you got 10 slices of pizza. Well, when you try to take one slice, you can't if you're wearing the box, right? Because you got to break a link, which you can't break a link on an attachment. Or you would have to res it, but if you're in an area that has no res, then you can't res it to hand off to someone. So this is like a really simple mechanic, that should be a lot easier and less clunky. Like I realize you could just give it to their inventory, they could attach it, whatever. But it seems like there should be a better way, So it would be nice if we could put some thought into how you could have an attached object that you could share with other people that isn't deemed or isn't regulated by the permission of being able to res,
So there are actually two proposals coming that are kind of hovering around that. The first would be one of the things is allowing certain experiences to override so if allowing an experience on a piece of land with a matching script to res in spite of other res permissions that may be set. That is one thing that's on the drawing board. There's another one which would be attaching being able to attach something directly from an object's inventory, be that a HUD or a slice of pizza, and that is also still on the drawing board.
Right. Yeah.
There is some thought going into that.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I brought the HUD issue up a while back. I think that would be really beneficial as well, being able to equip or attach from a HUD. There's a lot of applications for both ways regarding all types of things that you could do with it. So it would be really nice to see something like that.
Well, they're both different use cases.
Right.
Right. For instance, the allowing an experience to override would allow, for instance, a gun with a certain experience on it to be able to res its bullets, even if the land is otherwise no res. While the attached directly from inventory of an object would allow things like sitting at a table. If you sit at a table, then that table could res its game HUD without first resing it in world and then doing a temp attach.
Yeah, and that'd be great. It's been a long time, and we have these clunky mechanics, so to say. So just basic interaction and how you interact with people. It would be really really cool to see some improvements to that. So yeah, I'm glad that being worked on. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, see a question about more attachment points. Jesus, how many more attachment points do we need? That's the first question I have there. We already have a lot. Let's see. Yeah, that's a lot of attachment points. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure more attachment points is a solution to much of anything right now. I feel like the longer term solution, and this would have to come with something like custom skeletons, would be to like go through and have some sort of skeleton-defined attachment system or something like that with some attachment proxies that correlate to the current attachment points, just for compatibility's sake. But I don't think adding to that list right now for system attachment points is really the best idea in the world.
A chance to consider maybe allowing rigged items that are no mod to be linked together if they were to be used as an attachment. I know that that's a good way to do it if they are mod, because they all go to where they're designated, but we can't if they're no mod.
I mean, anything that interacts with the permission system is usually a maybe don't do that.
Sometimes it's necessary. Like, my face is like 6 pieces. My head's like, I'm Mrs. Potato Head.
Getting around permission stuff is usually like, we can't really have like mixed permissions or anything like that for objects. That's usually a very bad idea.
Fair enough. Actually, outside of that, it's sort of the same sort of idea. You know how you created that awesome double-sided thing with the PBR option? Is it possible to take that out of the permission system and put that somewhere else? Like put it in the top of the object editing menu entirely, like where you do the whole selected prim things or whatever. I just mean, like, these pants I've got on, for instance, if I sit on the floor and you look up my legs, it's hollow up there. Like, they're invisible because they didn't double side the pants. But if I wanted to just click that on, double side them, take a photo, click it off, I'm done. It shouldn't really be because the creator didn't know that was a thing, or, you know, they might not, etc. in the past. Double-sided sort of feels like it should be a user option, not a content creator only checkbox, I mean.
So what I'll say is that there are very strong opinions, both in and out of the lab, around relaxing certain permissions, even if it would provide some degree of resonant value there, largely because of the intent of the content creator and preserving the intent of the content creation process. It's a very loaded subject, is what I'll tell you, and there's not going to be any solutions or firm answers on that today. So, sorry.
No problem. Just wondered if it was a consideration, if that's all. Thank you.
Correct, and I wouldn't exactly say it got shot down. It's more so that there are concerns that still need to be worked through on that. It actually kind of goes to what Sassy was just talking about with regards to, you know, having something like double-sided be something that a user can just do regardless of permissions. So the old alpha gamma fixes, what those do is that they effectively have a special permission bypass, so that even if you have something that's no mod, you can go in and change it pretty much as a resident. This is to account for a variety of different legacy content use cases. However, there are some issues that have been pointed out, or at least more generally, the idea of having that special permission bypass for certain parameters just doesn't really sit well with a lot of people. So there's really two ways we can go about that. Either convince people that that is probably not as bad or terrible of an idea as they think it is, or we find another way to detect certain kinds of legacy content that require the old legacy alpha blending. Right now, we just really haven't had the time to go through and revive those discussions and debates, so it's just kind of been sitting there in limbo, unfortunately.
What Proc actually asked about the inventory, I actually was going to ask it in the next web user group meeting, is the chance that we have a Project Zero version that is just inventory access. The ability to just organize your inventory in a web browser, not even need to see it, just be able to move it about would be amazing, like inventory light.
I mean, honestly, that sounds like a great question for the web team. Because I know that they have a hand for in P0 right now, and I feel like that would be a really good enhancement for the web side of things. Let's see here, when's the web user group?
That's why I was saving it.
A web-based inventory browser is certainly something that we've talked about in the past. The next web user group might not be for a bit. I think syntax is out for a bit, so could be a couple weeks away.
I see. Well, the next opportunity, I would say, because I know that there's some cross-pollination there, would probably be the Project Zero user group, which is next Thursday at same time as this one. So, because I know that they're going to have to deal with that sort of thing here in the reasonably near enough future. So maybe going through and asking them, I would encourage that. I know the same kinds of people who would be working on that from a web perspective will most likely be there. So. As far as imposters for meshes, there's been a few ideas that have been kicked around. Like our imposter system, I'm going to be honest, it has not really aged all that well. There have been a few ideas floating around internally for a couple of years on ways we can improve that. Mesh proxies is one such idea that has been floating around. Basically, you take a mesh, you have a sort of virtual camera that records it from a bunch of different angles and figures out what's actually visible, and you have a sort of visible triangles only representation of that mesh. This is really more intended for avatars, and it is not exactly super flexible or like a silver bullet for everything, but like if you don't need to edit something, for a given object, it could be somewhat useful. I think that's one thing that we should probably be exploring at some point. I need to get that on the priority board and scheduled, but that's like one example of where we could probably do some significant improvements to imposters. Definitely, I would love to see avatars using this, because avatars are probably the heaviest things in all of Second Life, and I think I'm speaking for everyone on that one. I think we all know it. I think we all love it. I think we all hate it. I think we all love to hate it. So. Actually got one from the YouTube that is probably relevant to Ryder. Admet says that they would like to rotate avatars via scripts and not just artificially via animations. Got any guns for them there on that one, Ryder?
LL rotate. LL. What did I call it? LL rotate avatar. hold on.
Well,
There is a function that does this, and I'm just blanking on the name. But yes, you can do that. You can do that in a script. There's a viewer update. Thank you. Set agent wrote. Thank you, bumping. I should know that name since I wrote it. But yeah, that will turn your avatar. That will turn your avatar. So. And I'll try adjusting my mic so I'm not so hot.
let's see. Me Blogger says, on another subject, I think everything is complicated for new people in Second Life. I brought in people from outside who can't get going on their own. At the moment, what's most attractive is to get out and explore, to meet people, and although the new starter avatars have helped a lot, I still think there's too much information for them to understand the layers and the inventory. Has LL thought about providing a better tutorial for new users? Well, Prokofy is correct in that we have tinkered with that one endlessly. That is a very complicated subject. I wish Philip were here at this one. He would probably have a lot to say on that one. It's a very, yeah. I do know that there is some work going on for P0 to maybe help with that. I would say stay tuned on that end of things. And there is some interest in potentially bringing some of that over to the main viewer, but we're still exploring some stuff there. So unfortunately, this is not the best meeting to really talk about that one. And with regards to the whole gacha thing, Prokofy, that's such a really loaded one. I'm not really 100% sure what's going to happen there. We don't really handle a lot of the gacha stuff at this meeting. This crowd is really more viewer development and server development focused, and it's kind of like the intersection of those two things. Policy stuff, I don't even know. I feel like that's probably like a Linden support user group question, if any. And I guess another gacha one from Riku. I'm not sure what this urgent issue with gacha exploit thing is. That sounds like a writer question. Writer, have you heard anything?
We don't usually talk about exploits at the meetings, but this should not be possible. Did we bring? Yeah, I believe we've brought this. Let me switch views.
I'm just wondering if you guys have even caught wind of it.
So, yeah, if there is a new vector, Raiku, um, please write it up in a note card and send that to me personally. If there is a vector that you can reproduce that does this. And I will make sure it gets on the list.
I'm not sure that that's, if we're still talking about the gacha and the restarting regions thing, I'm not sure that that's still a thing that's possible, because now they charge $25 or something to restart rollback regions. It was rollbacks, not restarts, that was doing it. People were requesting a rollback. Oh no, I accidentally deleted half my region.
Rollbacks.
Yeah, it was rollbacks doing that. It's become one of those. So sorry, I don't mean to be rude, Riku, but it's become one of those kind of game of telephone kind of things that have run through Second Life, where people are getting really confused about what actually causes it. It was rollbacks that were doing it, and I know for a fact that one region owner lost her whole region, and when she requested a rollback because she'd accidentally, like, her main store, everything, they wouldn't roll it back because she happened to have 3 gacha items as decor on her region. So people at Linden Lab were very like, no, we won't do it because you had these things. And she was horrified. She'd lost like 10 years of her region because she happened to like the prettiness of 3 gacha items. So I don't actually think it's still a, so I don't know. You'd have to test it for sure, but it was rollbacks that were doing it. They would put down the items and then claim that they needed it rolled back to 15 minutes before they did that, picked them up, and then got up multiples.
Get back into some questions here. Tiger Crossing was asking about doing an inventory dump. That's a tricky one. There's a lot of things you can glean from an inventory dump that content creators probably would not super appreciate. That would require a lot of back and forth on figuring out how we do that. But I wouldn't get your hopes up on that. Another interesting one in here. Let me just pull it back up. Here's one from Waz. Are there any policy stances LL is looking at for people 3D scanning mesh objects and re-uploading them to Second Life? Some of these individuals sell these services, which is troublesome. Yes, actually. If people are, and this goes broadly, by the way, if people are pirating your stuff and re-uploading them, please submit a takedown request. Please talk to support. We don't want people stealing your stuff and re-uploading it. That also applies to people outside the platform who are having their stuff uploaded onto our platform without their permission and being resold and so on. You do have rights, as it turns out, and you have to talk to support about that. Let's see here. Ray asks, so this is something I'm just going to read this one verbatim. So here's something I've been wondering about. Nowadays in most games, foliage and grass is relatively inexpensive to render, but there's no way to replicate this behavior in SL, as you have to use separate meshes for this. Would it be possible to have a grass functionality of some kind added down the line? It would give the basic SL terrain a lot more to work with than just a texture. Well, we do have, the funny grass object. It's not super amazing, but we do have it. And I just spawned a few things out there. It could definitely use more work though. It's ancient. So we would definitely want to go through and at some point revisit this. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. But yeah. That's definitely on the more terrain and terraforming building feature set list. Really, I would want to know like what people would want out of that. I know that things like foliage is intensely subjective. So, for example, if we were to put more time into that, does that mean having some sort of spec that you can build foliage meshes against that you can then associate with these kinds of special terrain objects, stuff like that? So, more information would be better on what you want there. Please file a canny issue on that so we can go through and track that.
I have a quick question about the Linden homes. Is there any chance that with the new seasonal Linden homes that you'll be providing, I think I can't remember what the word is, where you're able to let content creators create for that system as well, so that when the seasons are changing at the Linden homes, they can change on purchased items as well?
That's going to be a landed support question. We don't really handle the Linden homes here.
Okay, no worries.
All right, getting back to some more questions from chat here. Rohakan, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. They are asking if we have plans to have someone working on small quality of life fixes like animesh scaling and animesh clickability, blocking avatar sounds without completely muting them, LL set link primitive params instant, no transition at all, rot pause scale. I mean, these are all great suggestions in terms of quality of life. We are taking on quality of life things as we see the votes appear on Canny. So, you know, I know people get tired of hearing it on repeat, but please file a Canny issue for that so we can go through and better track these sorts of things. Bumping Pixels or Darl asks, temperature check on bomb textures on attached animeshes. I wasn't aware that we didn't really support bomb on animeshes. So there's your temperature check. Pretty much cold right now. Something worth looking at. If you got a canny or something like that, I can socialize that a bit. Here's one for you, Ryder. Could routine restarts be timed to happen right after the periodic inventory snapshot? That would reduce the window for this attack. That's with regards to the...
That's with regards to the thing, and there are internal mechanisms that are meant to prevent it, and that's really all I'm going to say publicly on what the simulator is doing.
Yep, and that's the cue to drop that one at this point.
It's a nice way of saying yes. Let's drop that.
So Rai is asking about one that I'm a particular fan of and would like to get going someday, which is basically portal skyboxes. So portal skyboxes, or some idea of a portal skybox, has been something that's been raised at this meeting before. Additionally, we've also discussed ideas such as having, like, allowing you to just drop an HDRI texture onto the sky, so you can just have basically a skybox using that as well. I think there's a lot of things that we could be doing better when it comes down to enabling you just to kind of create your own, like, statically baked skies. It's definitely an area that I think warrants further investigation and research. So, Yeah. Again, it's just a priority problem at this point. HDRI skies actually almost got done. The biggest things that it's lacking is just an entry in the EAP sky settings. So, like, if we could get that working, then pretty much you'd be most of the way there, pretty much. So, quick time check. I do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. We got 8 minutes. It looks like. I'll probably be reducing the questions that I'll be answering here in a moment.
Did we answer about the version 2 landmark? Because I don't understand that question in YouTube.
Version 2 landmark.
If we can send in questions here, is there a time to ask about a version 2 landmark where the SLIL can be updated, e.g. can be changed by the creator, pulls dynamically when accessed by any owner? Apparently it was an approved feature in 2018.
I can speak very generally about that one. It's certainly something we've known about for a long time. The idea of it is certainly appealing to everyone, and it unfortunately just falls back to a matter of prioritization and finding time to work that into the schedule.
Kind of just so I understand, because I didn't really understand it. So is it that if, say, I made a landmark for my store and then I moved my store, I could update the landmark in everybody's inventory to go to the correct new store?
Think of it potentially more like the way DNS works on the internet now. You type in your domain name, and whatever the IP address is in the back end, that can be updated whenever. And as long as the network knows the name resolves to that IP address, you're still going to get to your destination. And we've got that style of, let's call it a landmark 2, as the question asker said, or just more of a dynamic landmark. It's certainly going to be something helpful. It's not at the forefront.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Journey. Or A Journey.
All right, see a few more questions here to try and get through. How do we feel about pre-baked probes, i.e. they don't render cube maps, they download them? For an environment like Second Life, that is intensely difficult to pull off, just because the whole point is that the world is always changing. So I don't foresee that really gaining much traction.
I decided to come on voice and say thank you in person.
Oh, thank you. Can we get clarity on why animations play shorter in true sequences and what can be done? I have not messed with the animation pipeline. I guess I would like a little bit more clarity on that. Like, can you give me some example on that? I guess while I wait for some example, just one that I saw pop in on YouTube. Edzia asks, "Hi, does will DAE stay as an option to load mesh?" Yes, pretty much until DAE is finally dead and buried by everyone in the entire industry, which may not be that far away. People are kind of tired of Colada, but we'll support it just because it doesn't really cost us anything to continue supporting it at this point.
Oh, yeah, that actually, with when we do the GLTF updates, and that's a possibility, you won't limit day uploads in future, right? Because there's so much full perms content where people are buying days that are older.
Yeah, we're not going to remove that. Though I would highly suggest converting them if at all possible. Things like applications like Blender are slowly starting to remove support for that kind of thing. So convert them while you can still load them is my most immediate advice on that.
It's more about the people that are not even going into programs. They're just buying full perms day and then bringing them into SL so that their name's on them as the creator.
Hmm.
Yeah, SL, it's fun.
Always. And always some sort of slightly eyebrow-raising practice that you hear about every day. Okay.
It's legit. They're legitimately doing it. They're buying them full perms day on Marketplace. They're downloading the files and then they're bringing in. It's so that they can use them in Substance Painter and stuff like that. But yeah, some people just don't do any of those steps. They just bring them in. So if those content creators have moved on or they're 5 years old or whatever, it would mean that they can't upload them.
Yeah. So, let's see here. I did see one about cylindrical probes. I've covered this one many times. That's probably not happening anytime soon. It is something we could look at in the future, but it is not currently a priority. If anything, I feel like the current probes need a little bit more polish before we really start to go through and start looking into additional probe shapes. And Prokofy, the main thing about Collada is that it's pretty much a dying format at this point. Industry-wise, no one really cares about it beyond us at this point. And the only reason why we care about it is because it's been the only real format choice since Mesh launched. No one really revisited that. Well, I'm told that someone attempted to, but ended up going nowhere. So really at this point, it's out of necessity that we have to go through and support GLTF, not out of, well, screw Collada or anything like that. It's entirely about this format is dying a very slow and painful death. How do we make sure the content spigot can stay on?
That is so funny. Is that really true, Cube, that they have that on the website? That would explain that email I got that time where they said, hopefully your Linden lab will go to GLTF soon.
Yeah, and with regards to FBX, that's not off the table. I mean, like, we do have to pick our battles when it comes down to what formats we support. More is, of course, always better. But I mean, at that point, you may as well start supporting something like the Open Asset Import Library or something like that, and take the compromises that comes with that. Anyways, it's top of the hour, guys. I have to get moving. Thank you guys very much. I hope all of you have a good day and a good weekend.
Thanks, Gaines. And by the way, your microphone sounds fantastic today.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.